Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm Carol Seal. I'm the CEO for Greater Chattanooga Realtors. Welcome to our economic update with Dr. Lawrence Yoon. This man needs no introduction. We've all had the pleasure of hearing him several times, so I'm not going to read your bio, Dr. Yoon, and let you have the bulk of the presentation time today. But I did want to say thank you to you for pivoting with us. Typically, we co-host an annual joint economic update luncheon with our local home builders, and we take turns trading off whose economist comes in to visit with us. But you agreed to meet with us for a little bit of time this morning via Zoom, and we so appreciate that. At last count, we had close to 70 folks who had registered for this, so we have a lot of people interested in what you have to say. This webinar is being recorded, and Dr. Yoon has agreed for us to share his slides later with you as well. So if you have anyone in your office who is missing out or unable to tune in, just know that we can push that out in other ways. For the audience, if you can use the chat to ask questions, and we'll come back to those at the end and pose those to Dr. Yoon. And with that, Dr. Yoon, I'm going to let you take it away. I'm going to give you hosting abilities and let you take it away to share your screen. Give me one.
Thank you, Carol, for the introduction. I visited Chattanooga, I believe, a couple of times. Always enjoyed the visit. The moon pie, I remember getting the gift of moon pie and enjoyed it with my family. Thank you for, again, inviting. And I also want to thank Carol because Carol served on the NAR research committee. So when you see all the report coming from our shop, it is through the advice and guidance of the research committee members, and Carol volunteered her time to participate. So many of these product and services we provide, it is through the guidance of the research committee, and thank you for Carol for serving on that committee. The other is, I always want to thank the local association president, Brandy Thompson, because we cannot do the NAR function without all the volunteer leadership at the local association. And I know that she cannot be with us today but I always appreciate the local association president. So let me go into the economic outlook and how I anticipate the market to develop. Bear with me as I put the screen, PowerPoint onto the screen. All right. There we go. So before the slide, if we can just jog our memory backwards, the first days of the pandemic. And I clearly remember that it was in mid-March because I was anticipating to see the basketball tournament, March Madness, but that was completely canceled. And in the first weeks, it was quite disconcerting about what was happening. First, about the virus, the nature of the virus. Is that like you touch one surface and does it mean a death sentence for the people who catch the virus? We did not know about social distancing measure the younger population. Apparently somehow they're completely immune from the virus. So we did not know all about that information. So it was quite a scary time. We want to be locked in at home and just avoid any health risk. The second component was quite a concern about the business outlook. What happens if there is no real estate transaction? Where does the income come from? Realtors have their own mortgages to pay. They have the food bill, utility bills coming. So what happens? Well, here we are in mid-July, and we feel quite comfortable. Now, things are not back to normal, and certainly there are still people catching the virus, and they have to go through the struggle. Hopefully they can recover. And some people, meeting some fatal outcomes. But we understand more about the social distancing measures. We know that we have to go to grocery stores, but also we know that buying a home, visiting someone's home, is much safer activity than going to the grocery store. Because in the early weeks, we did not want any strangers to visit any homes because we, again, did not know about the nature of the virus. The second part is the market is coming back. In fact, in many markets, it is actually higher activity in July versus July 1 year ago, surprisingly, given that we are in pandemic. And regarding the income situation, somehow we don't feel large distress. And the reasoning for that is the massive stimulus package bill that went into effect, the enhanced unemployment insurance benefits, which I hear a little background noise. I wonder if it's mine. So if it is mine, let me try to turn that off. Hold 1 second.
I don't hear it on our end, so, and everyone else is muted, so maybe on your end.
So if that's the case, then let me go ahead and just continue. Okay, there we go. So if we look at the economy, so what we are finding on the economy is that in the first quarter, remember mid-March is when the economy shut down, and it was a government-imposed lockdown. So economy shut down, contracted 5%. GDP is the measurement of the total economic activity, and you will hear President Trump mention something about GDP, along with Vice President Joe Biden mentioning GDP, because this is the bottom number figure for the economy. And it contracted 5%, led by the decline in consumer and business spending activity. But most interesting part is that the residential investment actually grew in the first quarter. So what is residential investment? That is home building activity, home sales, spending for remodeling activity, just to show how strong the housing sector had been prior to the pandemic. Then you look at the personal income after the first quarter. So in the month of April and May, it grew 12% and 7%. And it's not the growth in the commission income or the entrepreneurial income or the wage income. It is due to the stimulus package. The stimulus check, $1,200, a little more if you have additional dependent family members in the household. And also the enhanced unemployment insurance, where federal government provided the extra $600 on top of the normal unemployment insurance situation. So people's income actually grew. But what did people do with the income? Well, with the restaurants closed, baseball season not yet on, there was no place to spend money, so simply people saved up a tremendous amount of that money, which then means that as the economy moves into further opening phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, there is a potential for unleashing of this spending, savings back into the economy. So there's a sizable amount of money people have saved up. And in fact, if you ask the banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and others, they have a substantial deposit coming in as people are saving the money into the economy. As related to the job market, I'm going to look at the long-term perspective. So from year 2000 to the current. So if you look in the middle of the chart, there was some growth in the job situation up to 2008. But in hindsight is always a 2020 perfect vision. We knew that job creation was artificial, led by the subprime lending. People overstretched their budget. Builders went wild, keep building homes. So it was an artificial job creation because subprime loans could not be sustained. And it blew up and we lost a lot of jobs. But from the low point of 2010, all the way prior to the pandemic up to March, longest economic expansion in US history, 10 straight years of job creation. But if you look at the month of April, the first impact of the virus, and all that job creation disappeared in a single month from a government-imposed lockdown. Fortunately, as economies are reopening, the restaurants are beginning to rehire some people. I mean, they are not back to normal by any means, but dental offices are now bringing those furlough workers back to office. So many of the industries are beginning to hire back some of the people that have laid off. And also in the meantime, FedEx, Amazon, they are continuing to hire people as people are doing online shopping. They have to deliver the goods. So job gains are steadily coming around. Some sectors, say the cruise ship industry or airline, it may take a long time to recover. But other sectors like the construction industry, we need faster job creation because we don't have sufficient inventory in the marketplace. Now let's look specifically at the Chattanooga metro market. So look at this US, how 10 straight years of job creation, and in a single month, all that jobs destroyed. In Chattanooga, it looks like the following. So something similar to the US chart, but even with the decline in the jobs during the lockdown in the month of April, you see that we are not back to 2008 levels, unlike the US. So just again, comparison, let me go back and forth. US job situation back to 2008 low point, but in Chattanooga, holding on much better. This shows the strength of the Chattanooga market, broadly speaking, and also faster job creation percentage-wise during the economic expansion. Many Northerners are moving into southern states, including Tennessee, and many companies, as they are thinking about expanding or relocating, they are principally thinking about states like Tennessee rather than, say, Michigan or other northern states. So Chattanooga has been faring much better than the rest of the country. And you see that there's some job creation that was occurring in the month of May, and there should be more job opening in June and July, just because the economy is moving into phase 2 and then subsequently phase 3. Hopefully, the virus is reasonably contained. I know it's hard to stop it right away, but the economic lockdown again, I mean, that could be quite demoralizing. We just need to practice safe activity. Social distancing, mask, apparent health experts are saying that will greatly limit the spread of the virus. So, don't go into a party where you are rubbing elbows to elbows. So hopefully all that makes sense. And I know the realtors, when they are holding open houses, it's a safe activity with a very few people involved. Now, the unemployment picture looks quite ugly. Number of people filing for unemployment checks. First-time filers, people who are recently laid off and filing for the unemployment insurance for the very first time. It was a small blip before the pandemic. The economy was very strong. Then you see the rapid ramp up in the people filing for unemployment insurance. But with each passing week, there are fewer and fewer people getting laid off and filing for the unemployment insurance for the very first time. Now, this includes realtors for the very first time ever. In prior economic cycles, realtors never qualified for unemployment insurance, but we lobbied hard to say that realtors were doing business, they were working hard, high energy, but when the government imposed a lockdown, what is realtors supposed to do during the lockdown? So we said it is unfair for realtors to be out of the unemployment insurance possibility, and therefore through our lobbying efforts, and again, we thank all the people who respond to call to action or participate in the RPAC contribution, because that definitely helps communicate here in Washington. So, but the number of people who are filing for unemployment insurance is steadily diminishing with each passing week. I would say that reporters, the media has one thing wrong regarding this chart. They will pound on 46 million people who have been laid off and receiving unemployment check. Technically correct, but misleading. And here's why. If you look at the total number of people receiving unemployment check as of this week, it is not 45 million, 46 million, or 47 million, the sum of all these figures. Rather, the figure is 18 million. And what this means is that some people who are laid off, they are receiving unemployment check for maybe for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and suddenly they find a job at Amazon, or they find a job as a FedEx. So as they're finding jobs, some people are coming off the unemployment roll. So the true picture of the unemployment situation is not the 45 million who got laid off, but 18 million people are continuing to receive unemployment checks. So this is a more manageable figure. I mean, it's high, but it's much more manageable than 45 million that people media constantly pound on. So I would say that is a media reports incomplete news for the most part. Very, very few seem to be focused on this number, but they are focusing on the total number of fresh layoffs. Also, the unemployment check. You see Tennessee with $20. What does that $20 mean? What it means is that on average, person who lost a job in Tennessee is now receiving unemployment check, and unemployment check is on average $20 higher than the wages they were receiving before. And this is due to the federal government enhancement. Federal government is adding $600 per week additional on top of what Tennessee is offering. So these are quite generous. So on average, the person is saying that I lost a job, but I'm not worse off. If you look at say Florida, a typical person in Florida is about $47 per week worse off. But in Tennessee, essentially you are getting full replacement for most people. I know that some people they're worse off, other people are far better off with unemployment check, but on average, it's about equal number in terms of wages lost versus the unemployment check support situation. But this figure will end at the end of July unless Congress decide to extend it. President Trump is saying he wants to sign something. Now, whether it will be $600 enhancement as before or some reduced amount, maybe $400 enhancement, is unclear. They're debating in the Senate, but there will be some level of enhancement, maybe not as generous as $600 as before. Now, let's turn to the monetary policy. In Washington, it's just directly across the river from me. I live in Virginia. The Potomac River is nearby, and you go across in Washington. People know about the White House. People know about Congress, and we know that the Supreme Court is independent. Federal Reserve, just like the Supreme Court, is also independent. Congress has no control. President has no control. It is determined by the Federal Reserve Board as to what kind of monetary policy they want to pursue. And currently, they are all in, meaning the absolute maximum liquidity to bring down the interest rates. So for realtors and consumers, the practical result of this all-in policy is the mortgage rates, the blue line, at an all-time low of 3.1% average on a 30-year fixed rate. 3.1%, all-time low. You see that orange line. What is that orange line? Because it moves very similarly to the blue line. The orange line is 10-year treasury, what the government borrowing rate is, and it moves almost in sync. But if you look at the very last data point, 10-year treasury is under 1%, which means that mortgage rates, which are at a record low, may even go down even lower if we wait 1, 2, or 3 weeks. So there is clear possibility that the mortgage rate may go down lower from already record low levels if you wait, say, 2 or 3 weeks. Possibility, and a good possibility, but not a guarantee, because things can change quickly. So if you have a consumers and they like the rates today, go ahead and lock it in. If some people, if they need to wait a couple of weeks, there's no panic. Rates actually may be even lower in a couple of weeks. But one mortgage that is not working is jumbo mortgages. Jumbo mortgages cannot be sold to Fannie and Freddie. I know most consumers that don't know what Fannie and Freddie does, but they purchase mortgages originated. But jumbo mortgages that cannot purchase, and therefore jumbo mortgage loans are not working as normal, and hence you need a substantially higher down payment, pristine credit in order to get jumbo loans. But in Chattanooga, most people do not need jumbo. Most people, mortgages can be purchased by Fannie and Freddie or FHA government guarantee. So it should be all fine for most consumers in the Chattanooga market. San Francisco is a different picture because jumbo market is not working. So you may see some price reduction in San Francisco market because of the jumbo market dysfunction. Now, the inventory situation across the board is very low. Prior to the pandemic, one consistent message I received from Realtor members was that we can do more business if we had more inventory throughout 2019, throughout last year, and before the pandemic. What has happened during the pandemic? We have even fewer listings. And hence, we are facing even greater shortage of inventory. And that is why if you have a, say, middle priced home or below, and you price it correctly according to comps and what the appraisal would come in, you are often attracting multiple offers because of the lack of inventory. Now, on the upper end, there's plentiful inventory, but on the mid-price range and below, you are attracting multiple offers because just not enough inventory. And the first impact of the economic lockdown we are seeing in the closing figures. This is when the commission checks are cut, the keys gets exchanged, and the consumers move in, and economic impact of getting that moving truck, the title insurance and everything. So in the month of March, decline. April, decline. May, decline. But that would be the lowest point of the year. Why? I feel very confident that that is the low because pending contracts came back, rolling back in the month of May. So pending contracts are a leading indicator for closings, which means closing activity should be shooting higher in July, August, and even better news. Realtors always say to their clients, get mortgage approval first before searching for home in a competitive market. So what is the mortgage application activity? Prior to the pandemic, it was running about 10% higher from same period 1 year before. During the pandemic, collapsed 33%. And look what's happening now. It's running about 15% higher compared to 1 year before. So if you thought July of this year was, or I should say July of last year was good, this is implying July of this year, there's more activity regarding mortgages, which will then turn into pending, which will then turn into closings. So we missed the spring buying season, but all that activity may show up in late August, September, October. So based on the trends in mortgage application. So very, very encouraging sign about buyers wanting to take advantage of the record low mortgage rates. Unfortunately, we don't have sufficient inventory to fully satisfy all the demand that is out in the marketplace. And also the inventory shortage will not be fixed anytime soon because home builders contracted. They produced fewer homes during the pandemic. The orange line would be historical average. So back in subprime lending days, builders overbuilt. But for 10 straight years leading up to currently, builders have been underproducing, and the cumulative impact of that is inventory shortage. 2019, inventory shortage. I thought in 2020 that maybe we would have some relief, but because of the pandemic, builders cut back on production, which means that inventory shortage will be with us throughout 2020. Sellers have advantage over the buyers. So please keep that in mind. If you're working with the buyers, that could be quite a competition with other buyers. While for the sellers, price it correctly, because if you try to be too high and the inventory stays on for say more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks, there's a perception that it's a stale product. So you have to still price it correctly in order to attract the buyers. One big negative news for the country is that stimulus package is not pre-launch. It is coming from huge federal budget deficit. Who is purchasing this federal debt? Is it the Chinese government? And answer is not really. Is it the Tennessee Teachers Retirement Fund? Not really. The major entity that is purchasing all this federal debt today is the Federal Reserve. And where is the Federal Reserve getting the money? They are printing money. So in other words, the unemployment check that people have been receiving, you can essentially say that is a printed money. In other countries, like Venezuela, you print money, you have high inflation. Zimbabwe, print money, high inflation. Turkey, print money, high inflation. Even in past history, when the Soviet Union collapsed, they printed a lot of money, they had a hyperinflation. Germany, after the First World War, they printed a lot of money, hyperinflation. So if you print a lot of money, we could have inflation, but in the US, not immediately, because we have this extraordinary privilege of having the US dollar, the credibility of the dollar. What do I mean by that? $20 bill. You take that $20 bill to Mexico, or say you take it to South Korea, or take it to Italy. Any country across the globe, show that $20 and say, I would like a haircut. And they will happily give you a haircut for $20 bill because dollar is accepted currency around the world. So we are in a fortunate situation where we can print money and not have inflation right away. So I don't expect any inflation this year or next year. But you have to wonder, because we still need to print more money in 2021, that maybe too much printing of the money may lead to a little higher than normal inflation, unlike other countries, but we can still have a little higher than normal inflation. So if you envision 6, 7, 8 years from now, maybe 5% inflation becomes the norm. Social security checks will rise by 5%, but the standard of living will not because food prices are higher, college tuition higher, everything else higher, including real estate prices. Real estate is a very good hedge against inflation. Inflation, real estate value rises, so at least people are protected for people who are owning property. But there is a one major category where the expenditure will not be rising, and that is mortgage payment for those who are buying home this year or next year. Because once you lock in at record low mortgage rates, whatever their monthly payment, say $800 per month, that is fixed for the life of the loan. So people who are buying a home today, maybe this is one of the rare golden opportunity where you are locking in payment, even though there will be inflation possibility in future years. Real estate prices will be rising, so your equity will be rising, but not your monthly payment. So it could be one of the golden opportunity, something that you may want to talk with your clients about. Possibility, I mean, nothing is guaranteed in the future, but given the massive printing of the money, no inflation immediately because of the status of the US dollar, but down the road, if people remember the 1970s, we had high inflation in 1970. Why? We printed a lot of money to the Vietnam War, social spending, a lot of printing of the money at that time. So now, one has to wonder whether inflation will show up in future years. Let me go into the forecast quickly and wrap this up. So the forecast is 2018, 2019, home sales were very respectable. These are national figures. Chattanooga or Tennessee broadly, or Nashville has been booming. Home sales have been rising in Tennessee, unlike the nation when the home sales were fairly neutral. Then in the first quarter, it was running better than last year. Then we had the economic lockdown. Second quarter will be down about 28%. And the third and fourth quarter, I anticipate that it will not be severely as negative as the second quarter. In fact, I may have to upgrade the forecast because mortgage application is running much better than what I anticipated. And as we move into 2021, assuming we don't have a second economic lockdown, we have to contain the virus. If we don't have a second economic lockdown in 2021, very last column, everything should be positive. GDP growth, job creation, home prices, home sales. Whatever that is missed in 2020 will easily be made up in 2021. Good. And my final slide is the following. Even when the vaccine is discovered, and it will be discovered, whether later this year or early 2021, it does not mean 100% back to pre-pandemic activity. There are some permanent changes. And one of the permanent changes is this Zoom type of meeting. I hold my office meeting with my staff using Zoom. Many companies are doing similar. And many people are finding out working from home can be just as effective as working from office. Twitter has announced to their employees, you can work from home forever. If that's the case, why live in San Francisco? Facebook has announced to their employees, you can work from home with greater flexibility. And many companies will offer greater flexibility. So rather than going to office 5 days a week, maybe it's 2 days a week, or maybe just 1 week out of the month. I don't know how things will play out. Office market will be difficult, but this is a boom for affordable housing markets. Chattanooga certainly fits into that. Someone working in Atlanta, maybe they don't like the traffic. They don't have to go to Atlanta office every time. Why not go to live in Chattanooga? So you may have this additional elevated demand coming up. Or say someone living in New York City or Boston, if they don't have to work in the office every time, why not live in a much larger house at lower prices in Chattanooga? So you may begin to see additional demand beginning to come out even after the pandemic phase, because I think we have permanently changed some of the office, going to office relationship. And hence, people will move out further out to the suburbs or more affordable regions of the country, like Tennessee. So with that, I think you are positioned well. Only big concern is this major outbreak in the virus again and second economic lockdown. So please follow social distancing so we can move into phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 reopening stage. So thank you. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Carol.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Yoon. I don't see any questions yet in the chat, but some folks emailed some to me over the last couple of days, and I think you touched on all of them, but just to reiterate, the first one is, are economists seeing a V-shaped recovery like they predicted, meaning we would recover as quickly as we shut down? Yours looked more like not quite a V to me on the chart.
So for the economy as a whole, it's not going to be a V. Somebody is saying that, it's like a check mark. We went down sharp, but it's going to take much longer to get us back to normal because like cruise ship industry, airline industry, hotel industry will struggle to get back to normal. But the housing sector looks to be a V shape based on mortgage applications. So if there's one sector that is showing a V-shaped recovery potential, it is in the home sales market.
Okay, thank you. And we have some friends joining us from some neighboring associations. So someone out of Northeast Tennessee asked, as the labor market begins to claw back jobs, we're also seeing a decline in wages as employers cut back on hours of both returning and existing workers. So could you talk a little bit about that dynamic in relation to increasing home prices and the decline in affordable housing?
U.S. economy is always dynamic. So even prior to the pandemic, you had some industry with job gains and wage growth, anything that's related to technology area, and also in the construction industry. But in other industries, especially in the hotel sectors where you had a massive layoff, and now they are beginning to rehire on very small scale level, but understanding that there's a sizable pool of unemployed people who are looking for a job. Many companies realize in the current environment they don't have to offer higher wages in order to draw workers, especially once the unemployment insurance, that generous benefit runs out. So we have to just hope for continuing job creation. It's not going to be a V shape. So in terms of the wage growth of how it was before, it may be another 12 months before we get back to the normal wage compared to the prior pandemic levels.
Okay, two more questions that we have. Are people getting their jobs back who lost them due to COVID? You touched on it a little bit. In Tennessee, we're making about $20 more an hour than we were filing for unemployment. So talk about that again, if you don't mind, about people getting their jobs back post-COVID.
There are some technicality issues. So if a company said, okay, we had to lay you off because of the lockdown, but now economy is open, so we need to rehire you back. Even though the wages may actually be a little lower than the temporary generous unemployment insurance, the worker has to return. Otherwise, it could be reported to the unemployment agency to say the person was given a job but did not take it, which means unemployment benefit goes to zero. There are some technicality issue related to that. If companies recalls worker, they have to go back. Otherwise, unemployment benefit can be zero. But in terms of the overall job creation, I think we will steadily see more. Like home building activity shut down during the pandemic. But we know we are in housing shortage, so we need to build more. We need to hire more construction workers. And construction workers' wages are above average. And if anything, I think it may actually see some growth in the construction wages. So there are some sectors where you will see a strong demand for workers and workers returning. But other places like Disney World opened this week, but they're seeing only very, very light traffic in the Disney World. So it's going to take a long time for some industry to get back.
Sure. Okay. And the last one that I have is that at our virtual mid-year meetings, when you spoke with us, you predicted inflation to be delayed by 5 years. Any comments or revisions to that prediction in light of where we are now?
So yesterday, the latest consumer price index inflation came out. And it's a very small number, but as an economist, we focus trying to change to see if there's a turning of the corner or not. Many economists predicted that once we encounter the economic lockdown, high unemployment rate of 13%, that we would have zero inflation or falling inflation over the next 12 months or 18 months. What happened yesterday was that inflation actually picked up. It was like 0.2%. So at least it turned a corner. So that raises some concern about economists to say maybe inflation could actually begin to rise a little earlier than anticipated. So rather than 5-6 years down the road, it could be only 2 or 3 years down the road. Now, please be mindful, when inflation happens, mortgage rates will be higher. So again, I would say right now is a golden opportunity. I expect mortgage rate again to be historically low next year. So we still have some time to work with. But if people want to wait 3-4 years, I think the mortgage rate will be higher by then.
Okay. We just had one more come in through the chat. We'll answer this one and then we'll wrap up because you agreed to give us about half an hour today and I want to respect your time. This last question is, it's a big one. Do you think the outcome of the elections in November will affect the economy negatively or positively?
Oh, that's an easy question because my mother always said, talk about religion and politics with the public all the time. Regarding the election, country is highly divided. We'll see how it goes. In terms of home buying, what we find is that for home buying activity is really about pocketbook issue. They can have a strong opinion about presidential candidate, election outcome, but they look at their pocketbook and say, is the mortgage payment manageable? Is the mortgage rate low? Is the inventory available? People make decision on this part. To escape that broad question, at least the housing market for the most part will not be impacted. Only the upper end market, there's some pause about who will be the president before they make the decision on, say, $1 million home purchase. And I live close to DC, and DC market also freezes sort of in a few months before the election. But the rest of the country, past election data shows that it's really a pocketbook issue. Do they have a job, mortgage rate low, and that pretty much determines the home sales activity.
Okay, awesome. You handled that one perfectly. Dr. Yoon, thank you. As always, you make economics interesting and you break it down into understandable terms, and that's why we so appreciate you. And I think we just gobble it up every time we give it a chance to hear you speak. So thank you so much. We know you're super busy. You're entertaining a lot of requests like this across the country in light of the NAR travel ban. So we really appreciate your insight and your time this morning. Just a reminder to everyone who's watching this, we did record it and we will be able to share the slides later as well, because I know you probably want to share those in your offices as well. So to you, Dr. Yoon, and to everyone listening, we hope you are well and stay safe, and thank you very much.
Have a great summer, everyone.